here's the big problem. Narcissus may be sexy and he knows it, but he's got no interest in sharing it with the rest of the world. And while characters like Artemis and Athena set a mythological precedent for the perpetually single, it's not that Narcissus isn't into people like that, he's just way too arrogant to ever feel like anyone's worth his time. Romeo's at Friar Lawrence's place again, having a meltdown when Juliet's nurse drops by and delivers a ring from Juliet, so he immediately cheers up. He and Juliet share some liaison. Ugh. Now, before I get started, I want to say a couple things. First of all, I basically never noticed this stuff before this topic was suggested to me. Sure, I've read and watched tons of entertainment with dude heroes, but it never occurred to me to examine them for stereotypes. See, it's easiest to notice weird assumptions or stereotypes in a character when you otherwise relate to the character, but that particular assumption doesn't gel with you for whatever reason. I mostly got weirded out when characters kissed on screen, or when girl characters were weirdly lacking in autonomy. It frankly didn't occur to me to examine male characters with the same level of scrutiny. Probably because I was already used to not fully relating to the characters, so it didn't really click that there might be more to that disconnect than just a difference in gender experience. Guy heroes are largely straight, which means guy heroes are largely into girls. In anime, you do get a surprising number of asexual guy heroes, which I personally appreciate, but for the most part in Western media, it's guy needs girl badly. And there's nothing wrong with that, even if I personally could go my entire life without watching another forced romantic subplot, but for the most part, your dude protagonist is gonna have a lady love or a lady who wants to be his lady love. If he doesn't, it's probably because he's either old or deeply traumatized, or he had a loved one but she's dead now. Now, I am neither a guy nor am I straight, but it seems weird to me that fictional dudes are at all times either in a relationship, trying to be in a relationship, or trying to get over a relationship. I mean, God, don't you get tired? Demetrius tries to escape Helena while she demands that he, treat her as a spaniel. Ugh. Galahad got largely written out of the mythos in the 15th century when Thomas Malory basically left him out of his rewrites, but he does make a cameo in Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur during the wacky exploits of Sir Dinadan, a knight predominantly known for being neither a lover nor a fighter, who thinks courtly love is dumb, fighting for sport is lame, and it's much more entertaining to prank his fellow knights at the table round and be an overall swell guy with a great sense of humor.
For decades, if not centuries in the US and UK, the most popular attitude towards that sparkling rainbow of human diversity was that it was a thing, sure, but nobody was allowed to acknowledge it. You couldn't be upfront or overt about queer tendencies, those were private and shameful, and you would be super arrested and punished if you were caught being queer too loudly. It's not that these identities didn't exist or weren't known about, it's that they were mostly obscured, actively punished, or most commonly referred to with obfuscating, polite euphemisms to discreetly imply that someone was queer without making any concrete statements that would violate the sweeping agreement that these people's very existence was fundamentally indecent, embarrassing, or otherwise a problem to be covered up or fixed. That woman who never seemed interested in getting married or settling down isn't asexual or aromantic or a lesbian, she's a spinster. Modern queer-coded villains still have a lot of the baggage from the original Hays Code version, like how their queerness will sometimes be used to signal that they're extra unhinged or dangerous, tying back into the idea that it's something inherently abnormal and alarming. And certain identities get most of their on-screen representation by way of queer-coded villains. And if you're asexual or aromantic, most of your good rep comes from robots, and the rest of your rep comes from evil villains incapable of understanding what it is to truly love.
It is really hard to make a computer pretend to be a human, and even the most convincing bots these days can be thrown off by unexpected curveballs. We don't have any real AIs that can pass for humans. So if you're a writer, how are you supposed to write an AI recognizing that there are no real AI to draw references from? Well, typically the writer will take a garden variety human, strip away some characteristics to make them seem like an incomplete human, and slap on some blinky LEDs. Ta-da! Human-like AI. They may be stoic, emotionless, humorless, sexless, incapable of picking up on subtlety, and or generally pretty monotonous to be around, and they're generally human enough to have a meaningful conversation with without having to repeat yourself 4 times to explain that no, you are not trying to call that guy from middle school you haven't spoken to in years, you just want to know what the weather is gonna be. No, the weather. The weather! Hey Siri, is it going to rain? No, don't play 3 Days Grace! Right. And the problem is that this take a human and cut some bits off strategy produces a robot character that closely resembles a neurodivergent and frequently aromantic and or asexual human. And those are fine characteristics, but they're not typically represented in non-evil human characters we're supposed to actually like. So the only places we typically see them are in overtly inhuman characters. The problem isn't the character traits, it's the context we see them in. Robot characters constructed in this way will frequently come across as being somewhere on the autism spectrum, along with being asexual, aromantic, ADHD, and or having some kind of antisocial disorder. And if you happen to tick one or more of those boxes, the most positive rep you've probably ever seen has been a friendly robot whose relatable social quirks were played for laughs by the rest of the cast. Hooray, this is an issue. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of absorbing the social background radiation that major defining qualities of who I am as a person are only ever seen in people who aren't people, just, you know, personal preference. But it's understandable, right? I mean, if you're writing finding a robotic protagonist your audience is actually supposed to like, it stands to reason that they need to be at least a little human. Isn't the only way to do that to take a human character and remove characteristics until they start feeling just inhuman enough to pass for a robot without losing their relatable core qualities? Isn't it just an unhappy side effect that these stripped-down characters resemble some marginalized real-world demographics that society characterizes as fundamentally deficient or lacking in some core human traits? Isn't this just the only way? Let's talk about Baymax.